Hi there, and welcome to this month's edition of our YouTube live chats with alumni here, our Gale Tail Hangouts. This week we have Nick Cartan, class of '09. He is the vice president for business development with Fox Sports College. He works specifically with USC, and thanks a lot, Nick, for getting a chance to sit down and chat with us.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Zach.
So I guess let's just get it rolling a little bit here and kind of explain what is it you do. I know you're in your new role. You've been there in it for about 5 months or so, and so kind of take us through like what it is your role is now.
Sure. So now I help oversee Fox Sports College properties, and collectively we manage the multimedia rights for USC, Auburn, Michigan State, Villanova, Georgetown, in the Big East Conference. And what that means is that we manage the sponsorships and all revenue generating assets on behalf of the universities. So what I do now specifically is I help oversee all property acquisitions, new revenue streams, working with our existing properties to monetize their assets, and helping to grow new business across our portfolio. So help oversee all the schools and the teams there, and identify ways where we can generate new revenue and grow our business.
Great. And now you've kind of like gone up through the ranks pretty quickly there at Fox Sports. You've been there for almost 6 years. Just kind of talk about that transition of like how you kind of got into being in business development, and you started out in kind of like operations and also government relations. And so kind of talk about that transition of moving to the business side of the industry.
Yeah, I've worn a few hats on my way, but really, when we started this in 2011 with just a couple of people, and we were a startup. And so if anybody who's worked in a startup or who plans to work in a startup, you wear a lot of different hats. Your past marketing experience, PR experience, operations in my case, it all comes into play. And so I think it is very natural sort of place for somebody who's worn a bunch of different hats to come into a startup and really try to have an entrepreneurial outlook and approach to the job. And then, naturally that has sort of transitioned to a more structured role where I focus on business development, I focus on new business and revenue generation. And I think that's just been a natural fit for me. I'm comfortable in this space. And I think it's where I'm most effective. So sort of transitioning from the startup mode, which we were 5-6 years ago, to now, sort of found my way a little bit more, but certainly, you sort of need to wear a bunch of different hats when you're such a small business unit.
Right. And what some of the skills that you did kind of pick up along the way have really kind of helped you in what your role is today, and how does it kind of separate you from maybe some of the others who did take maybe a bit more of a traditional path for down business development?
Sure. I mean, my path is pretty unconventional, actually. I was an English major at St. Mary's. I spent most of my time at St. Mary's traveling and studying abroad and studying at some other schools. And so really my path has been a collection of a lot of different experiences, a lot of different people, picking up things along the way. And really just kind of, you talk about what skills do I need? I mean, for the most part, it's just having a curiosity to learn and find ways where you can contribute, and kind of apply the things that I've learned from other disciplines to the business world. I think sometimes we get so cookie cutter in thinking about how we can apply what we've learned in a business school class or things like that to our jobs. But in reality, in my experience, it's really been a mixture of English and even things like, going back to St. Mary's seminar and Socratic method. I mean, that's really what I'm doing every day is I'm having high level dialogue with people. You're asking questions, you're answering questions. You're trying to hone in on your social skills, and you work together to find solutions to help further your business. And that's really what I do every day.
And talk about like how like some of those different experiences internationally. Like, were there what international did you kind of pick up that's kind of helped you out? Because obviously in the business world, it's like you're not necessarily dealing with people who are just from the States. You do sometimes pick up, especially working with schools in the Pac-12. You have a little bit more international flavor. And how is that kind of how has that international experience helped you in that respect?
It's a tough question. I mean, I think for the most part, it's international travel for anybody who's spent quite a bit of time overseas, or really just with people different from themselves. It's all about trying to find those areas of comfort in places that are perhaps uncomfortable for you. And really, the more interactions you have with people who are different from you, who believe different things, who are from different places, eat different foods, speak different languages, the more well-rounded you'll be, the more prepared you'll be to interact with folks of a different background domestically or in business. And so I would say that that's the most transferable quality, is just to be very comfortable with working with people who are very different from you and have different backgrounds, because in the business world, that's a big piece of it, is really trying to work with everybody and communicate effectively with people, even if you don't speak the language.
Mm-hmm. And like coming out of St. Mary's, was this kind of like necessarily the path you thought you would take, or what did you kind of have in mind of like what you thought you were going to do, and then what happened along the way to kind of take you to where you are today?
Sure. So the answer is no. This wasn't really the goal. At St. Mary's, like I mentioned, I was an English major, and the reason that I chose English was that I wanted to travel. I studied in North Carolina, I studied in Rome, and traveled around a lot. And English was an easy way to transfer credits back to St. Mary's to make sure I could graduate on time. So I knew that I wanted to go to graduate school, and I thought that developing skills, reading, writing, the ability to analyze, the ability to communicate effectively would be skills that would serve me well once I figured out which direction I wanted to go. Once I decided to pursue business and sports business, it was a natural fit. It's where I have a lot of my passion is for business, but it's also for sports, and to be able to combine those two made it an easy thing to push for. It made it an easy thing to wake up in the morning and do your best to try to achieve. And certainly not where I want to be yet, but I'm enjoying each day, and really proud to be a part of this organization and help grow it.
Well, like, was there something, I know because you ended up going to Georgetown and their sport management program, and just so was there something specific in that grad program that really kind of like got you to like really focus like in that direction, or was it something you picked up along the way in one of your other jobs, kind of like as you kind of went along, or what was it that kind of like really started to kind of spark like this direction of interest?
Yeah, and I get the question a lot about grad school. Do you go to grad school or don't go to grad school? And in my opinion, and what I was seeking in a grad school was really threefold. I wanted to see the different sides of the industry. What, is everybody a sports agent, or are there different things that you can do when studying sports business? And I wanted to see the diverse spectrum of opportunities that existed there. I wanted to be exposed to real world issues. Like I said, I was an English major, so transitioning to studying economics, to studying more business centric topics was something that I wanted to pursue. And then lastly, I wanted to grow my professional network, because as we all know, that's a big piece of getting your foot in the door, or having folks vouch for you. And what attracted me to Georgetown was the brand. I grew up following the brand, and knew about its academic and athletic achievements or prowess. And then, the program itself, I wanted to go and study with the folks who had the same interests as me. I wanted to study with folks who were different, that were pushing towards the same goal. I wanted to study from their professors, which aren't professors at all. They're general managers and CEOs of businesses, and they kind of take a less traditional path to curriculum. You're not really learning from academics. You're learning from practitioners in the industry, and that was really exciting and attractive to me, to learn from folks who were in the industry that I wanted to be in, and absorb their energy and try my best to contribute to that environment as well.
How have things on the business side kind of changed within the Pac-12? And now we're starting to get games that are overseas, like basketball starting to play games in China, or you're starting to see more games with an international flavor, or the fact that there are more international student athletes within the conference. Has that sort of changed the business model or dynamic of who you try to whose business you try to bring in and who you try to actually market to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you want to you're constantly trying to broaden the scope of the fans that you're touching, and that's really what we try to do is connect brands with fans. And if the fans happen to be in East Asia, or if they happen to be on the other side of the country, creating those dynamic platforms that allow those folks to engage with your brand and ultimately engage with your fan base is something that's a high priority for us. And bring up a good point. Pac-12, there's probably no conference more international than the Pac-12. And I know that it's a big initiative of theirs to expand into China, especially. From our sake, we try to create the most dynamic platforms that we can to connect our brands with our fan bases. And no matter where that is, we try to structure our assets to accommodate them.
How was that transition going from, because a lot of times, like you had some St. Mary's under your belt, working with the West Coast Conference, and then going to a place like working for an organization like USC, which is obviously vastly larger. Like, what sort of transition was there as far as scope of just the magnitude of what you were dealing with?
That's a good question. I mean, it's obviously Fox Sports is a big international brand. But to be honest, I mean, when we got here, we were a startup, as I mentioned. And so I was used to working in the smaller environment. We didn't have business cards. We didn't have a name, computers, and we just sort of tried to create it from the ground up. Now, we had two advantages. One was an excellent parent company in Fox Sports, and one that allowed us to take the necessary risks to invest in places that we needed to invest in order to create a better product for our partner universities, which was initially USC. And then our second advantage was having a brand like USC to take to the marketplace and sell. And I think, in my opinion, that it's a top 3, top 5 brand in college athletics, and that certainly makes your job as a revenue generator easier when you have a brand like that to sell against. And so it wasn't as big of a hurdle as early, because we had two great brands through which we could utilize to grow.
And now for like some of the students who are still kind of like trying to find their way, what would be some of like some big pieces of advice that you would give a junior, senior, or even like a freshman or sophomore, of like how you kind of like start to point yourself in the right direction, regardless of if it's business development or being in sport management in some sort of way? Like what sort of steps would you advise someone to take while they're still in school?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest tool is to be curious, to ask questions, to seek information, to surround yourself with people who will offer diverse perspectives on whatever you're interested in. Grow your network, start now. Internships, unpaid opportunities, grow your network, get out there and, create relationships, because ultimately relationships turn into jobs, they turn into recommendations, they turn into advocates in your network who will, vouch for you when the time comes. I think, creating your own luck is a really, kind of cliche term, but good things happen to people who kind of arrange the chess pieces so that when an opportunity does open up, they're the ones who are considered. And that happens through networking. It happens through relationship building. I would also say to have the most dynamic experience in your own story. I think life experiences are just as important as professional experiences or internships. And to seek those out, not only for yourself, but I think that it goes much further than people think, having life experiences and interesting parts about them that an employer might find appealing, but also that may help you in your professional role. You never know where you're going to be drawing from to help your business grow.
Great. Thanks a lot, Nick, for getting a chance to sit down and chat with us. Good luck to USC and with your work at Fox Sports, and hopefully we can get a chance to talk again soon.
Very good. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.